Hello guys, welcome to lesson number 25 in our series Drawing Tutorials for Beginners. I've gone a little bit further on with this drawing. I've added a little bit more of the texture in the scarf area, and now that I've sort of got all of the hair in this upper area, I can see, if I compare it to the reference, that I'm going to need to bring out a little bit more of the darkness around this cheek area here, which should hopefully pull this cheek forwards, and maybe a little bit with the forehead. I'm also going to darken up around the clothing area and in these areas here, and then final clean up around this area with my electric eraser, and I think that should probably just about do it for us. So sort of another 35-40 minute tutorial here. I'm really pleased with how it's coming on. It's been fantastic seeing some of your work over on the Facebook group. I can't believe how many people are now starting to almost catch up with us and be at this sort of level. I'm excited for the next project. I think that the overriding consensus when I put up the two pictures recently on the Facebook page was people would like to do the dog or the wolf. I'm not entirely sure exactly what it was. So without further ado, let's crack on with this. I'm just going to freshen up my kneaded eraser as normal. Make that into a ball. I've sharpened my pencils, I've washed my hands, and I'm going to start off, I'm going to go in with my 7B, and I'm going to start bringing out some of this darker value in this cheek area. It's been a real pleasure seeing some of your work recently. I was just looking through some of the pictures. I actually made a bit of a collage not long ago, a few days ago now, and just of some of the work, just some of the, no work in particular, I just went through some of the photos that get saved onto the group Facebook page and made a bit of a collage, and it's fantastic to see all of the work on there. And I've mentioned in a few comments how it's really interesting to see some of the individual sort of styles that you've all got going on there. Although we're all drawing the same reference and we're kind of sticking to the same types of techniques, it's really interesting to see how some of your work is starting to show your own personal flair and your own personal touches. I think that's really fab, and it's you know, it's one of those brilliant things about art, that even though we are all using the same reference, we're all working the same way, using the same pencils or similar pencils, things do have their own look about them. So just working in these areas now, and it's this is my favourite part of any drawing. I really like this stage where we are now, just finalising things, taking out those final highlights, adding those final dark areas. I am going to use my secret weapon again later on in this, which, if you cast your mind back to our last drawing, you'll know that we used that just to bring in some final contrast. Thanks so much for all of the support that I've been getting over on the group and also on the YouTube channel as well. I've had a lot of new subscribers recently, some lovely comments on there as well, so thank you so much for that. I don't think you realise how much of a difference it does actually make. Sometimes I think that I'm sitting here recording these videos and I'm literally talking to myself, but it's nice to know that there are people out there that are listening to me, and some of you, by the look of some of the comments on there, actually enjoy listening to me waffle on. I know sometimes we do go a little bit off-piste, but what I want to do is just kind of give you an understanding of exactly what's going through my head as I'm looking at these references and these pictures, and start getting you into the mind of the processes that I go through. I know some people are visual learners. Some people can sit down and read a book and process that information. Some people can just listen. I think that it's a skill to be able to find what works not only when you're trying to teach somebody, but actually figuring out what's your best way of learning things. I'm certainly quite visual. So I'm just working in these darkest areas in this cheek. I will fade out with one of the lighter pencils as well, just so that we've got less of a harsh line here. We've got more of a contour into that zone. Just going to bring a little bit of the value into this forehead here, because we want the contrast between this lighter, slightly more protruding forehead area where it sits forward just before it then comes into the brow area. And as long as we're sticking to these rules of light, we can understand that. We know why certain areas are lighter and certain areas are darker. And we can then draw what we see, which again is something that I do go on about quite regularly. Don't ever try and draw something that's not there. If it's a hint of darkness, make it a hint of darkness. Don't go too dark. If it's a hint of light, same thing applies. I'm going to come in with the HB now, just to try and soften where some of that 7B has ended in this sort of area up here. I don't want these harsh lines, and I want a smooth transition from the dark areas to the light. I know it's something that I do go on about an awful lot, but if you want to get realism, you need to have smooth transitions from your darkest areas to your lightest areas, and we also need contrast. An accurate drawing, initially an accurate sketch, will add to realism. There's nothing worse than looking at a drawing that has the elements, the contrast, the smooth transitions, but the initial sketch was slightly out. But what we then find is you just take the viewer's mind away from it interpreting things in a realistic way, and you just lose that sense of realism. Just crisscrossing these lines. For those of you that this is the first lesson, by all means continue watching. I hope you enjoy it, but I really would recommend you going back and having a look at the first few. If you look at the playlist, if you go to my YouTube channel, the actual channel itself, if you just click on the Artistic Nick icon, that will take you to my channel. There's a heading up there that says playlists, and under playlists you'll find Tutorial Tuesdays Beginner to Pro. Go and have a look at the first few lessons. What we talk about there is how we're laying this graphite down. Now I know that it looks as though I'm probably scribbling, or what you would deem as scribbling, but I'm not actually scribbling. I'm using what we call a tapered stroke. I'm using lots and lots of downward strokes. I'm pulling the pencil towards me. But what I do need to do is I need to make sure that I'm moving the paper around. Now I have said in previous videos that I don't move the paper around maybe as much as I should do when I'm making these tutorials, because I want you to get the best experience that we can. I want you to be able to see things, and I just think that moving the paper around a little bit too much can take away from that. So I personally try to keep the paper a little bit more still. However, if you want to create smooth transitions and you want to make your skin texture look smooth, it's very important that you do move it around, because what we tend to have, if the strokes are all going in the same direction, what we do is we create a texture, and we don't necessarily want much of a texture in these areas where it's skin. So I'm just going to change the angle of the paper slightly so that moves the strokes in a different direction. Moving the paper around is also another really good way for you to spot what you need to adjust. Maybe in the initial stages when you're laying the sketch out. It's a trick that I often use, and I actually turn the reference image upside down. And what that does is it makes my brain work slightly differently. When you're looking at a picture, the same direction, the same reference image for a long time, your brain almost tunes out and stops seeing things. It's almost like the saying, you sometimes can't see the wood from the trees. But just by simply turning the paper around and looking at your drawing maybe upside down, gives your brain another opportunity to see things that maybe it had lost, it had forgotten about. So I'm definitely big on that. Another good way of just checking your image is take a photograph of your reference image and your actual drawing. And again, this will immediately draw your eye to things that are slightly off. I know there was a few people on the group that posted recently were saying exactly that. They'd posted their image and they said immediately as soon as they'd posted it, they could see a few areas that needed improvement. Sometimes looking at your image with fresh eyes can really help as well. So if you've had a long drawing session, leave it for a couple of hours, come back to it and have a look. And it'll be amazing what you actually do pick up and see. Okay, so I'm going to come in now with my Faber-Castell Polychromos black. It's a Schwarz black, and I'm just going to start to add some darker areas in the darker areas on my reference. So the pupil is always the darkest spot on your drawing, but also this ring around the eye, and I might just pick out a few darker areas. Now it's important you don't go overboard with the black. We're just going to add some subtle hints in there, again using the tapered stroke, and I'm layering up. And I'm not entirely sure. I've had a few conversations with people and read certain things. When you look at an image, I'm not entirely sure whether it's the dark spots that catch your eye first or the highlights. It's one of those two. Maybe everybody's different, maybe every reference image is slightly different. But I certainly know when I'm looking at an image that's very, very realistic looking, that my eye is certainly drawn to certain aspects, and I can't figure out yet whether it's the dark areas, those subtle dark spots, or those subtle highlights. I guess it's probably a combination of the both. So we're just going to lightly bring out some of these darkest hints in and around this face here, just bringing the contrast up. Now be very careful with using this marker. It's not easy to take off. You're certainly not going to get anywhere near as much of it off as you would do graphite, so this is why we're leaving it until the very end. And I'm layering very, very lightly. The great thing about these polychromos is they do hold their sharp tip very, very well. I've got some Prismacolor, I think they're called Prismacolor Premier pencils as well, and I really like them, but they're much better for drawing skin. They're a slightly softer pencil, and they don't hold the tip as well. So when we're trying to draw anything like hair here, I do like to use the polychromos. They're made by Faber-Castell, which are a very well known, very famous pencil brand, or art supplies brand. I've actually got some Faber-Castell graphite pencils as well, which I bought before I bought the Caran D'ache, which is what I currently use. I know there's a few of you on the group that have gone and purchased the Caran D'ache, so I'm hoping that you're getting on well with them. So I'm just going to take out some darker strands within this darkest area. If you cast your mind back to some of the other videos that we've certainly spoken about, and again, as we go through these tutorials, you will hear me repeating myself. I just want to get across the most important aspects, and one of the things that I was talking about the other day, I think it was in the last lesson, was it's important that you understand even within the darkest areas. So for example, in these areas here that are the darkest areas on our image, there are going to be darker areas within the darkest areas, and this gives me a good opportunity here now to start to pull out some of those. So it might be the odd strand of hair here and the odd strand of hair there. And all the time I'm just building up the contrast between my dark and my light zones. Just adding some darker areas to the edge of this head. I know that from working on the sphere exercise that the edges of things are always going to be darker. That's where the light's going away. So I'm going to try and adopt that in my drawing. Got some dark recesses in here, but I can still see that there's texture and movement in there. There's hair in there. It's not a flat surface. So I'm going to try and, as best as I can, and I'm not trying to draw every strand of hair. And I think that's the key when you see people that are struggling to draw hair. A lot of the time what they're trying to do is they're trying to get too much detail in. They're trying ever so hard to draw every strand of hair, and unfortunately that's an impossibility. I've never ever seen a drawing where somebody's managed to get every strand of hair in, because you only notice, even when you're looking at somebody in real life, you only notice every strand of hair if you get very, very close to them and you're looking in very close detail. So we don't actually want to have a pencil stroke representing every strand of hair. What we want is to look at the direction, the shapes and patterns that we have emerging, and look for those. Just give the viewer, push them gently in the direction of, this is a blonde hair, this is a dark hair. This is a dark hair, but this is a darker hair within the dark hair. Like I was saying, in the darkest areas, you're always going to have an area that is darker still. The same is true in your lighter areas. So if you look at our reference here, even in this blonde hair, this is the blondest area. So we're going to make sure that we try our absolute best to bring that out. I'm going to have some darker areas within the scarf. you've not already joined the group, guys, if this is one of your first visits, come and check out our Facebook group. I'm pleased to say it's one of the nicer Facebook groups that I've been part of. I know there's a lot of people that join Facebook groups and it ends up turning into arguments and political statements and people not enjoying their time on there. And there's a lot of Facebook groups out there that are rather spammy, and I'm happy to say that this isn't one of those. We've got a really nice group of people starting to share their work and giving some constructive criticism, but it's all good, it's all, it's all helpful, which is what we all want. We're all beginners and we're all learning. I'm learning things. One of the things that I'm actually learning is some of you are catching me up. Some of your work's as good as mine, which is wonderful. And I've got no ego, I've got no problem with people producing better work than I can. That's fantastic. And I can't wait until, like I've said before, some of you start to sell some of your work. That's a wonderful, wonderful achievement. There's not many better feelings than when you get an image sent to you. Maybe someone's posted onto your Instagram a picture of yours that you've done for somebody up on their wall, or the young child holding a picture that you've drawn for them, a superhero or something, and that's a wonderful feeling. And I'm pretty sure it will be bettered, for me certainly, when I see that some of you, or from some of you that have produced work and somebody's bought your work, or you've made somebody happy with the work. That will be a real sense of achievement for me. So I'm just bringing out some of the darkness in this young girl's jacket area here. I think it was only a few days ago, I can't remember exactly who it was now, but one of the members of the group has decided to name this young lady June. And you do get quite attached to these images. You're spending so many hours looking at them, and you almost create a personality and a persona for them. And somebody in the group aptly named this young lady June, and I think it's a great name. So I think we are officially going to name this young lady June. So just starting to bring out a little bit more darkness in this upper area here. And again, I'm not bearing down with this polychromos. I'm still turning the pencil to keep a nice solid and sharp tip as best as I can. I'm not bearing down by holding too close to the end or the tip of the pencil. I don't want to damage the tooth of the paper. And again, you've probably heard me dozens of times now talking about not damaging the tooth of the paper. The more you press down, the more you flatten the tooth of the paper, the more difficult it is to take those subtle hints out, which are so important. The slight value changes that give your drawing that realistic look to it. Now I can see on there we have some faint eyelashes, and every time my wife walks in and sees me doing one of these pictures of young ladies, she always says, "Oh, have you done the eyelashes yet? Have you done the eyelashes? They're my favourite part." So she will be happy to know that yes, I am putting in some eyelashes. And going back to the tutorial, the eye tutorial, which was the last project, just getting a grip of the understanding of where these eyelashes come out from and the direction that they move in, so they don't just all stick up straight. The eyelashes closer to the edge of the eyes fan out towards the edge, and as they come to the center, you're going to be looking straight at it, so you're going to have much more of a straight looking eyelash. And again, just building up the layers, not trying to have the individual eyelashes. That looks very fake and manufactured. We want a subtle hint. Your eyelashes on the top eyelid are always going to be slightly thicker and more of them than on the underside here. We want some very subtle hints, particularly if we were drawing a male. It's very easy to go overboard and it look as though this young lady's going to have mascara on, which actually, when we're drawing a female, is not the end of the world. But it's very easy to ruin a drawing if you're drawing a male and you've put slightly too many heavy eyelashes in there. So I'm happy with that. Again, it's just a hint. Maybe a few darker recesses around there. I'm going to get some final texture in this hair with the Mono Zero eraser. Okay, so I'm just going to clean up the edge here now. I've got a Derwent electric eraser and I have been clearing this up with the kneaded eraser as we've been going. But as you can see, I'm not entirely sure if you can see clearly there, but there's an awful lot of graphite still within this area. It's a little bit noisy. I'm not entirely sure you can hear it too much. I don't know if my microphone's picking that up too much, but apologies if it is. Just committed one of the deadly sins for drawing. Don't ever blow on your drawing to get rid of the excess rubbing. I've ruined plenty of drawings in the past by blowing on them and I'm just working in some patches and just tidying up this edge. I've not found another eraser that gets the graphite out as much and leaves you with such a clean area as these electric erasers. Now hopefully what I'm going to be able to do, as I'm using this eraser on the edges here, I'm keeping it on the edge. I don't know if you can see this, and what it's giving us is it's giving us quite a sharp point, so hopefully I'm going to be able to start taking a few strands out in the highlighted areas. So I'm almost sharpening the eraser. Nearly there with it. So that's made quite a big difference actually. It really makes it stand out. So just brush the excess off there now. So I'm just going to take a few of these lighter strands out now with the pointed end. Using the tapered stroke even with the eraser. Give that a final brush over, and then I'm going to take a little bit of value out of this cheek area with my kneaded eraser. Just going to dab some of that out. Just to lift that forwards. Create that wonderful contrast in there. And similar in the forehead area here. Take a little bit out of the white of the eye. There's still value in there, but we're just finalising it all off. So taking my Mono Zero eraser now, just making sure that the end of it is clean, and we're just going to come in and we're going to take out some wispy hairs in some random directions. And this really does just set the drawing off. Gives it that realistic, natural, organic look to it. There's hairs coming over this scarf. Just some fine hairs coming over the face. Using this tapered stroke again, even with the Mono Zero eraser. If you haven't got a Mono Zero eraser, if you've only got a normal eraser, cut it to a fine point, just so you can get some of these wonderful strokes. Just keep making sure you take the excess rubber and graphite off of the tip of the eraser. You'll be amazed how much it builds up. And then we'll give it a little brush just to take some of the harshness out of it. Just brush a little bit more graphite into some of those areas, and that will allow us to add another layer. And we can keep repeating this as long as we want. And I've said many times in the videos that your drawings are never complete, they're just abandoned. We get them to a stage where we think, yes, I know I could probably spend another half an hour repeating this, and it, you know, if this was a commission for somebody, then we would perhaps want to do that. But remember, what we're trying to create here is art. We're not necessarily trying to create a photocopy. So it's to your discretion. When you think that you've captured the essence of what you're trying to draw, the personality maybe, then you are absolutely okay to leave it there. And I think, barring a few touches here and there with the HB, I think June is ready to be signed. The HB pencil is a good pencil to take in some final strands of hair and some final details, because you can press slightly harder and still keep a relatively sharp point, just to put in some of those finer details. So, I think barring a few tweaks here and there, I'm happy to call this one complete. I've had a lot of fun with this. It's been fantastic seeing some of your attempts, more than attempt, but it's been a brilliant learning experience. So really the recap is, to draw blonde hair, we use our eraser, we build up in the negative spaces first. We brush our value in and we take out the strands of blonder hair with our erasers, whether we're using a mono zero eraser or a kneaded eraser or an electric eraser. And I've actually used a combination of all of them to produce this piece. And we repeat, rinse and repeat, keep building up the layers. Understand that we need to develop the contrast, and we need to build up the different textures, and I'm really happy with how this scarf has turned out. Again, this scarf is one of those things that you could overdo, and I'm happy to sort of leave it how it is now without overdoing it and overworking it, because the main focus for our eyes is this young lady's face here, the eyes, the hair. We don't want to take away from that. So as you can see, I could probably spend another hour doing this, but I'm really happy with this. So let's find a nice place to sign this. I'm probably going to come in just on the side of the coat. Let's date this. So where are we today? We are on the 1st of July. I've used a 2B pencil for that. Thank you so much for watching and joining me in this series of lessons. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. It's been a real learning experience for me. I hope you've picked up some fantastic skills. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, join the Facebook group, hit the like button, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next tutorial where I think we're going to start with our dog. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate all the kind words and comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. Hit subscribe, smack the notifications button, follow me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter.